Okay, I think we'll get going. So, hi everyone, thanks for coming on. My name's Karen, and I'm from Ku-ring-gai Council from the Community Engagement Team. I also have Lindy here with me, who coordinates a lot of the bush care volunteer and all kinds of volunteer networks that we have across Ku-ring-gai Council. And we're here tonight to sort of help the community develop some strong applications for our upcoming 24-25 environmental levy grants, which are opening in April. So we really want to get a good message out to help you guys sort of put your applications together so you can put the most successful application across to us. So we've got a few speakers with us tonight who were past recipients of the grant who put in successful applications. So they're here to help you sort of if you have any questions about the process, they're sort of the best people to get in touch with about, that real life experience of getting your grant application in. So I'll just quickly share my screen and then we can move into the evening. So just give me 1 second. It's been a while since I've used Zoom. We're always sort of on Teams in the office. So just bear with me. Okay, so share. Here we go. All right. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Yep. Perfect. Just put Jules in. Okay. So this is our environmental levy grant information session. Should go. So I'll just do a brief acknowledgement of country. So just like to pay my respects to the traditional owners, past, present, and future. Ku-ring-gai has quite a complicated sort of history with acknowledgement of country. So I can't really reference any direct peoples, but just like to do that acknowledgement of country there. There we go. Okay, so we just have our brief agenda. We'll go over the environmental levy grant. Lindy will cover a brief history of the grant. Then we'll move on to Vanessa and Michael from Macquarie Uni, and then Sarah from Energize, and then Julie from Taramara Bush Care Group, and we have a short video from Leslie from Wahroonga Adventist School. And then we'll have some time for a Q&A at the end for any questions you might have. Okay, so I'll just quickly pass on to Lindy.
Hi. So the environmental levy has been very popular over the 20 years that it's been brought in, with strong support from the community and councillors. The grants were identified in the development of the environmental levy as an opportunity to invest in environmental projects with direct community benefit. So the first round in 2005 was a modest $12,500, and over the last 19 years, as you can see, over 300 successful applications and over $1 million worth of funding. Last year, round 25 was just over $100,000, and that was because we had 50,000 for conservation and 50,000 for net zero. The environmental levy grants cover a very broad range of very broad areas, and we're going to hear from some of those tonight. From research, we're going to hear from Professor Michael Gillings and Vanessa McPherson about their research, and we've also had another successful application from Macquarie University last year, which was looking at the effects of fire retardant on the environment. Conservation, as you can imagine, is a big one, and a lot of applications are about conserving remnant species. St Ives High School, restoring and creating habitat. The flying fox at the KFFR, as the Ku-ring-gai Flying Fox Reserve, have been for 20 years restoring habitat there for the grey-head flying foxes. Small bird habitats popping up all over Ku-ring-gai. And maintaining sites following ecological burns is quite a specific task. It needs some very fine technical weeding that's done by contractors. Restoring and protecting EEC, and you'll hear from Julie Antle talking about Taramara, the blue gum high forest there and what they're doing. And educational signage, very popular with schools, workshops, And of course, our native beehives, the program there, a lot of schools apply for beehives and bee hotels. Of course, the ongoing monitoring, we had Wild Things, had a $5,000 grant last year to continue monitoring the hollows that were put in to residents to see what was using those hollows, and that's been really successful too. And then the citizen science projects, for example, the Streamwatch. Getting the Streamwatch program going in Ku-ring-gai was started by a grant. So that's really it for the broadness, and I'd like, you be able to hear from some of the successful applicants now to talk about a little bit about what their projects were.
Yes, thanks, Lindy. So just before we get into that, I'll also mention that obviously last year we introduced the new net zero category for the first time. And those projects are focused around that energy, waste and transport themes. So we've got a speaker, Sarah, tonight, who'll be going over some of the things that she did with her net zero grant. So that's another category that also has $50,000 allocated to it. So it's very exciting that we have that one up and running again this year too. So now I'll just pass on to Professor Michael Gillings and Vanessa McPherson, and they're going to talk about their application and their project over at Macquarie Uni.
Okay, so what we're interested in is how fungi support plant growth. And we're interested in how native fungi help us manage native bushland. So that's the title of the grant. Next slide. So the question that we have is, if we want to take the bushland on the left-hand side here, which is basically privet and a bunch of weeds, and we want to revegetate it into what it should look like, which is a Coachwood gallery forest, should we also be thinking about restoring the fungi that plants depend on? And the reason we came up with this question, I'll just get Ness to explain why we came to this question.
Yeah, so we'd spent a lot of time, particularly during lockdown, we used it as an opportunity to get back out into the bush because the labs were all closed. We couldn't get into work. So we thought, well, why don't we get back to the roots of biology and research and being curious and go outside? So when we started walking through the amazing bushland that we have in Ku-ring-gai, we started noticing that we could kind of tell if an area had been regenerated or if it was weedy or if it looked pretty well untouched based on the types of fungi that we were finding in those areas. And that kind of led us to think, well, you know, if these areas are so identifiable by the fungi that are around, what's going on? So we were concerned that if fungi aren't regenerated alongside plants, that even if an area looks good in terms of the vegetation when it's been restored, that it might actually not last into the future. So it might look good for a generation or two, but the fungi and plants that are in the pristine areas have such a close relationship and are so dependent on each other that we wondered if it might actually be really important to pay more attention to the fungi. And one of the things that we found really important in this process of applying for a grant is to actually talk to the people on the front line, you know, talk to the people who are doing bush care and bush regen and ask them what they've seen and what they think and what they know to be important and what it is that they're doing.
And so we had also spent quite a lot of time telling this research story to bush care groups, we've given talks at Wild Things. And so we already had an established connection with a series of people in council. And that's always a good thing if you're applying for a grant. So the next thing to do is actually in the grant application itself. So once the council people have said, oh, you know, this sounds interesting, we'd encourage you to apply. Make sure that you address the criteria that are set out in the grant document. And the best way of doing this is to just get the grant document and paste it into a Word file, delete all of the things that are not relevant to you, and then highlight the things that are of interest to council and are part of the criteria for granting an environmental levy grant. So you can see that this is just cut and pasted from our application. And the two criteria are improving the natural environment and increasing community understanding. And then in a short paragraph underneath that, make sure that you highlight what you're going to do that it helps address those criteria. And because this is being recorded, you can read this in your own time and get an idea of the kind of language that you would use to show that your grants align with the criteria for the grants. Next slide. Okay, so the next thing to do is you want to explain to the granting body exactly what you're doing and exactly what you're going to spend the money on. So you need to have a detailed plan and a detailed budget. Now, I have to say that the kind of research that we're doing, which is DNA work, costs a lot more than the environmental levy can fund, but that's okay because this is public good and, you know, we like to do these things. The other thing is to write simply and directly so that anyone can understand what you're doing. So I'll get Ness again to explain, and you can see the map here. This is actually Stony Creek in Gordon, where the flying foxes are. And that's just one of our study creeks. Ness will explain what we're doing.
So what we're doing is we're going along these transects and identifying areas that are populated by weedy vegetation, so things like privet or other invasive species, or if they've been revegetated, which we know because we've spoken to people at council, or places that look fairly pristine. And we're going through and we're sampling the soil in these transects, and then we're extracting DNA from that soil, and we're using that DNA to identify the fungal communities in those areas. And we're hoping that that will give us an idea of what fungi are where, and whether that might suggest that they're actually really important in maintaining a resilient ecosystem, particularly when we're thinking about revegetation.
And so we've got 3 creeks, Stony Creek in Gordon, Blackbutt Creek also in Gordon, and Cowan Creek. And we start at the top of the catchment, and every 100 meters we take a sample, or about 1.8 kilometers, something like that. And at each point we're taking GPS, we're noting the vegetation, and eventually what we hope to do is to identify all of the fungi that are in the soil and correlate that with the state of the vegetation around the sampling point, whether that's pristine, revegetated, or weedy. And by doing that, we hope to, well, firstly, identify biodiversity in Ku-ring-gai. Secondly, to ask the question about whether revegetation also renews the fungal communities. And thirdly, to just plot out some of the hotspots of fungal diversity in the local area. So I think that's all we have to say. And I think the next slide is just about questions, and it's got our email addresses on it. Plus 2 beautiful fungi, Bavaria zolingeri and waxcap.
Yes.
Say, yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
We'll, if you do have any questions, we'll have a Q&A at the end. So if you do have any questions, just hold on to them and we'll get to them once everyone's had a chance to speak. Thank you, Michael and Vanessa. And yeah, beautiful photo. All right, moving on. I'll just introduce Sarah Wynn. She's the chair of Energize North Shore, a fantastic community group, not-for-profit in Ku-ring-gai. So I'll just pass on to Sarah.
Thank you, Karen. And yes, I do agree that last slide was a very beautiful slide of 2 fungi in the Ku-ring-gai area. Good evening. My name is Sarah Wynne. I'm the chair of Energise North Shore Inc., which is the community group that was set up in late 2022. I'd also like to thank Ku-ring-gai Council for hosting this webinar and congratulate anybody who's taken the steps to actually listen to this webinar, who thinks they have an idea which will benefit our community by reducing energy waste, carbon emissions, or protecting and enhancing our natural environment. You're almost there. So I hope there's something I share which can be of benefit. We're Energise North Shore Inc. is a not-for-profit group. We're Ku-ring-gai residents, and our motto is we're here to support and engage our community to reduce emissions, transition to renewables, and protect biodiversity. We're one of 12 successful recipients of Council's 2023 inaugural environmental levy grant for net zero communities in Ku-ring-gai, and we're very thankful that we were awarded a grant to help us for our project, which we had been discussing prior to applying for a grant, which was a speaker and audience session to be held at Kalara High School with a focus on electrification and going to zero, which we've titled Adopting Renewables in a Changing World. And part of this event was then to feed in Solar Made Simple sessions, which we've been working on with another community group in the net zero sphere in the Northern Beaches and Mossman area, called Zero Emissions Sydney North Sydney. So our project, focusing on electrification, was going to examine how we could adopt technology and innovation to reduce emissions, and what we as individuals could do to electrify our lives, affect positive change, and go for zero. It was also aimed to educate the community to adopt different technologies and, as I said, provide that feeder to our sessions. Thanks, Karen. So as Vanessa and Michael said, you've got to do a lot of work before you actually hand it in. So poor planning prevents poor performance, as my husband would say. So you need to do a few questions, research, prepare and plan, and think about the audience who you're writing to. So it's Ku-ring-gai Council who's funding the grant. So your application has to be geared towards Council's aims, and it has to be succinct, and you've got to make reading not a chore. So I made things, this was our first grant application ever, but I treated it almost like bullet points. Like Michael and Vanessa did, I actually made it into a Word document and set it out with background, what we were trying to achieve, venue, what are the outcomes, presenters and so forth, which I'll talk about later. We also had to self-assess whether our group and our project was eligible. So we had to read the selection criteria thoroughly and consider if you address the criteria, when you address the criteria, what supporting evidence you'll need. Timing is also important. What are the key dates? When is the grant money available? When did you want to hold the project? Do you think that you can implement your project within the time frame and also spend that money within the time frame too? So we went into a lot of detail on project timelines and an Excel spreadsheet where we sort of had to allocate resources and so forth to see whether we could do this and pull it off, because it was quite a big event that we were organising. Thank you. Our application was selling our story, we're selling ourselves, and we actually provided our track record, what are the prior events that we've organised, our website and so forth. We were very fortunate because we'd held an event earlier in the year at a school in the Ku-ring-gai area, which some councillors attended and council staff, so they got to experience firsthand what we were capable for. We also outlined our proposed event, detailed the event background, who the presenters were. We had some great presenters organised. Australia's Chief Scientist, Dr. Kathy Foley, had signed up, and Richie Merzian, who's a Director of the Climate and Energy Program at the Australian Institute and was one of the negotiators on an adoption of the to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. So we were very excited. We also had a venue, Kalara High School, so all our stars were aligned and we were ready to go. We also set out what the key performance indicators were. How do we check whether our event is a success? What's we need something tangible to measure if it was a success or not. And examples of our KPIs were participants showed interest in solar and attended one of our solar sessions, or in the follow-up, participants installed solar on their residence with 1 year. Another one was attendees had a greater understanding of how innovation and technology worked and went about to start electrifying their lives. And we actually set up a feedback survey, which we sent on to participants after the event, and then 2 or 3 months later, just to inquire if they had made small changes to their lives, how had they electrified their lifestyle, had they decided to install solar, or had they attended one of our Solar Made Simple sessions. Our budget was based on anticipated audience numbers, which was 150 to 200, and from that we could work out our budget for the event. And we needed to check against Council's criteria that every budget item we included met Council's criteria, and we were as accurate as possible. And I would suggest that if you can't find any exact costs for whatever you're trying to do, then just an approximation will suffice for the time being, and you can always check with Council. We also had a few queries because this was our first grant application ever, and it was so we wanted to make sure we did the best that we could. So I contacted Council and once or twice just before we had to submit it, just to ask a few more questions for clarification. And then I would suggest, and what we did also was actually gave our draft application to a third party and asked them to read it. Did they understand what we were asking for? Did they understand the main points we were making? And from that feedback, we then refined our application and then submitted it. And I suggest also keeping a copy for reference. Thank you. So what was the outcome of this event? Well, we had a few trials and tribulations, and this is where we become a bit of an outlier in this webinar because part of our project still hasn't happened and things have happened in reverse order. So we have held 4 Solar Made Simple sessions from August to November last year, and we attracted participants not from the event, but just from advertising, word of mouth, and being on Council's website. And from there, we then sent feedback surveys to inquire how participants were going on, whether they adopted solar or not. Thank you, Karen. So my point is, Regional Plan 8 project, we had to pivot because all of a sudden the venue that we were holding at was undergoing renovations. Then it was school trials. So we had to push the event back later to the year. And then our star speaker, Dr. Kathy Foley, was unable to present on the date for our venue. And so everything was up in the air. We had to pivot quickly. So my suggestion would be flexible, have a plan B if that happens. I hope it doesn't, but if it does, be ready to act because you only have a short time before the funds dry up and you've got to show what you've received the grant for. So we now have a new guest speaker at the same venue and we still hope to attract the same number of participants. One other problem we had was we had to apply for insurance, which we originally thought we wouldn't need. So that was an extra expense we hadn't accounted for. But having done that, we're now able to use the venue of our choice, which is Kalara High School. We've done all our detailed plans, all the works now, all we have to do is implement it. So that actually expedites the process. And we've developed relationships with other community groups who work and operate in the same space, who can also cross-promote our event. So watch closely for Adopting Renewables in a Changing World, now to be held in mid-May. It'll be advertised on Council's website. I hope you can attend. And I wish you the very best with obtaining grant for whatever brilliant idea you have, which will benefit our community. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Sarah. And yeah, we're very much looking forward to that event coming up in May. Keep an eye out on the Council page. Okay. So now I'll pass on to Julie, who's with Tamara Bush Care Group. So welcome, Julie.
Thanks, Karen. And wow, what 2 impressive projects to hear about. Very, very interesting. So our bush care group works in Turramurra Memorial Park. You can see the map there. Unfortunately, I didn't do a red ring around our particular site, but it's just to the right-hand side of the Turramurra oval. You can see right in the middle of this, yeah, round there, thanks. It's a small patch of blue gum high forest, and we've been working there for about 18 years. We've got approximately 10 active members, but not necessarily all at the same time. Why we applied for the grant was after COVID and after a couple of seasons of lots of wet weather, we missed many working bees. We had a major problem with weeds. There was an explosion of weeds. We hadn't had time to get there, and we desperately needed additional help to make inroads to the weeds on the site. But also importantly, we just needed to keep the group motivated, because we were getting a bit despondent of what we were achieving or not achieving. So we decided to investigate putting in an application for an environmental levy grant. And I can tell you this grant application is the simplest and easiest application processes you can possibly have. I've put in grant applications to federal and state agencies in the past for the Turramurra Community Garden, and this one is by far the easiest. So keep that in mind. So first of all, so let's see, yeah. So this is the site before the contractor came in. And there's a second slide too. Thanks, Karen.
Oh, is this the one?
No, back again. Yeah, that's the first slide before, and that's the second.
Yeah.
So
gotcha.
It's hard to see in detail, but there's all sorts of things, kikuyu, trad, all sorts of things in there. So this is what we were facing. This is just one small section of our site. So we, first of all, we examined the application guidelines, the Q&As and the application form to make sure our tentative ideas would meet the aims and criteria of the grant program. We felt any of our ideas would do this. So, for example, the overriding criteria for the environmental conservation grant is to inspire action to improve the condition of our natural environment or conserve native flora and fauna. Well, we were rehabilitating bushland for vegetation and habitat values, so clearly we'd meet that criteria. We also would be meeting two others. First one, increasing community understanding of the value of the natural environment by chatting to curious passers-by in our highly visible site in the park. Sunday morning, people are out strolling, taking the dog for a walk, and so a lot of them would stop and ask us what we were doing. Another criteria that we met was increased community action, as often these passers-by would be recruited into our bush care group as time went on, so our numbers expanded. So we felt confident that we could apply for the grant and we would have a reasonable chance. So we then started to zero in what our particular project would be. And so we spent a fair bit of time identifying the challenges of the site, discussing what the main challenges were and where any grant money would be most usefully spent. We came up with a number of issues, of course, all worthwhile. We had trouble deciding what to focus on. So I contacted Lindy at council to discuss the various possibilities. She came down to the site, which was great, and helped us decide to target a small section at the back entrance of the park. So this was when the focus of our application was finalised. We had a project name, which was regeneration and replanting of a section of blue gum high forest in Turramurra Memorial Park. So then we get to specifying the details of the project. In the application form, most of the questions are just simple facts to be collated. Contact details, as the land manager said you can do this, and so on. However, questions 8 to 11 involve much more thought and discussion with the group. They require us to specify the details such as the aims of our group, the specifics of the proposed works, the expected outcomes, how those outcomes would be measured, and what a successful project would look like. So we did a first draft of the answers to clarify our thoughts, and then kept editing to improve them as much as we could. We kept relating our answers to the criteria that we felt we were meeting. So filling in the form, we had to remember that the assessment panel has many applications to read and evaluate. So we tried to be as brief as possible, to the point. We found dot points were good for this, at least in clarifying ideas, and I think Sarah mentioned that as well. We tried to be very specific in describing our aims, proposed works, outcomes, etc., and careful not to repeat the content in different questions on the form. As answers, we found that answers to some questions could overlap answers to other questions, so we had to try and separate out because we didn't want to keep repeating content in the answers. And I think, maybe this is what Sarah said, we found a good idea to get someone who's not closely involved in the grant application to read the answers to make sure they make sense and they are clear. Sometimes you can get too involved in things and you can't see the problems. We also added some attachments, like a map of the park and surrounds, like we first saw in that slide, a map of the Turramurra Park community master plan, rather, to zero in on the site. We put in a photograph and Lindy's email indicating the land manager had given permission. So luckily our application was successful, and it enabled 5 generators from a private bush regeneration company to spend 1 day work on the area that we'd specified. Lindy handled the hiring of the contractors and the payments, so that was really easy. So slides 5 and 6 now. So this is after the contractors have been...
Sorry, let me go back. My apologies. Here we go.
So that's part of the area. The next one is probably the better one, that you can see what they've done. You can see it's a lot clearer. There are little patches of native grasses, native ground covers there. A whole lot of trad has been removed, and so we feel they've done an excellent job. And we now have a large area where we'll do a mass planting at our next working bee in April. We've ordered, I think, about 70 plants, and council is providing those plants. So as for the process, our group enjoyed applying for, back again. Our group enjoyed applying for the grant, and we were delighted with our success. We went down and met the contractors and discussed the work they were going to do. We also feel appreciated and supported by council, and overall much more motivated to continue our work to maintain and improve this small but precious remnant of blue gum high forest. So next slide. So what I'd say is you can do this. Don't be daunted by the application process. It takes a lot of thought and quite a few hours of your time, but if you're successful, it'll be a boost to your group, and the natural environment of Ku-ring-gai will thank you. If you're unsuccessful, you'll be better placed for an application next year. especially if you ask for feedback about why you were unsuccessful. So it's a win-win situation. So go for it.
Amazing. Thank you, Julie. Really fantastic to see. Again, any questions, we'll have that at the Q&A at the end. We do have a short video now from Leslie, who is a science teacher at Ku-ring-gai Adventist School. They put an application in also for the net zero section for a recycling bin system and sort of a return and earn scheme as well. So I'll just stop sharing that. The video might be a bit choppy, so I do apologize, but we will be putting up a live link to the video, which we'll upload onto YouTube, so it'll be a lot smoother if you want to go back and watch it there. But if you're representing a school, this is a really great one to watch if you're putting in a grant for a school. So I'll just share that with you now. Okay, here we go.
Hi everyone, my name is Leslie White. I'm the head of science here at Ku-ring-gai Adventist School, and I'm just here to just let you know about the environmental grant. I believe it's called the environmental levy grant that you can apply for. It was very straightforward. I received an email from Sally from the council who recommended we apply. We have environmental ambassadors, which are our student leaders at our school, who are always looking for grants so that they can implement some great initiatives and some projects that they would like to do. So one of the things that the environmental ambassadors have identified at our school was that we have a problem with waste, and they get really upset when students just throw everything into landfill. And so one of their projects was to create a waste system that allows them to recycle things in a straightforward way. And so the environmental levy grant allowed us to use that money to order in some bins, some yellow lid bins, mini wheelie bins that allow the students to separate the waste. So not all the cans and not all the bottles are ending up in landfill. And so they're actually return and earn bins, because our year 11 students then use those bottles and put them in the return and earn system to gain some funds for their mission trips to Fiji, wherever they're doing their mission work. And so we have this system set up now, thanks to the grant, and it was straightforward. You just answer a few questions, and then I believe we had a waste audit completed by the council, which was also quite helpful. We had the year 9 students spend a class with the representative from council, who went through one of our wheelie bins. They emptied it all out and categorized all our waste. And so it was eye-opening for the students to see where all their waste is going and where it could go instead. And so it's just been a really great project, great initiative, and all the students are very happy with everything and how it's progressing. Yeah, thought I'd share that with you guys. I encourage you to apply for the grant as well. Okay, bye.
Okay, so just a bit of a small snapshot there from Ku-ring-gai Adventist. Like I said, it was a little bit choppy, but if you want to see the full video again, we will make it live for you. So give me 1 second. I think we will now move into Q&A. So we won't have it like a chat. You're more than welcome to just unmute yourself and ask your questions. So if anyone would like to go first, just pop yourself off mute and ask away. Maybe
I'll
Sam
go
first. I can see your hand up. Yeah, go ahead, Sam.
Thank you. We are very, very interested in the bees, in the native bees in the bee hotel for our primary school. I'm at Holy Family at Linfield. And is that the same grant? I know that it's a different sort of process because it's under a certain amount. Do we fill in the same grant paperwork?
I'll pass that to Lindy.
Okay.
Hi. So it's the part of the conservation grant. So there's two environmental levy grants. One's conservation and one's net zero. So the bee hotels and the schools would fall under conservation. We're trying to make the grants more of a minimum size, just because to reduce some of the resources. It takes as much time for a $500 grant almost as a $5,000
see.
grant. So, but I would encourage you to apply for like a pollinator package, something that
Yes.
is, maybe a bee hive, a bee hotel. They're quite different. They attract different types of insects, and a range of plants to go with it. So you're looking at a bigger, maybe $1,500 grant instead of $500 grant. And
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. And if you apply for the pollinator package,
yes,
that's your grant done, isn't it? We can't also put in for the waste thing. That's it.
waste would be a net zero grant.
I think you
So
could do them perhaps as two separate grants. So maybe
Two
put your pollinator package grant, your $1,500 towards the
Mm.
conservation section, and then do a second application. So don't put it together, just do a second application,
For
same
net zero.
details of where you're from, all that kind of thing. And then put that one as a waste, your waste project, put that one under the net zero communities category. So you'll have two different applications. One will go to Lindy for conservation, and the net zero one will go towards me.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, you're very welcome. Does anyone else like to ask any questions?
Yes.
Paul, go ahead.
Well, yeah. I don't understand why net zero is receiving funding as part of these grants. How was that approved, and what is the rationale?
So the net zero funding comes under the new net zero community strategy that was adopted by council a couple of years ago now. And part of that strategy, there was a section in there to help the community start projects around, helping Ku-ring-gai reach net zero. So if you like, I can put a link in the chat of that strategy from our website. So that was adopted by council. I can pop it in the chat. I can't remember the exact year. I think it was about 2 years ago now. So that went through to council and it was approved. And then within that strategy, there was a section towards community development, and that's where the grant fits in. I'll just pop that in the chat for you. Were there any other questions?
Yes, I must say it seems a little odd that these community grants are supporting something like net zero. And, it's an issue which
That's a
council...
valid concern, we do have a complaint process. If you'd like to put a complaint through, there is an official format for that as well. So I can pop that in the chat for you as well. And you're more than welcome to express your concerns through that channel. Absolutely.
Look, it's not about a formal complaint. It just seems a little odd that this money is being used for that.
Yeah, absolutely. You're more than welcome to express your concerns and that oddness through that channel. But I'll just move on in case anyone else wants to ask any questions. Did anyone else have anything to say?
Karen, I just had a couple of comments. Perhaps it might be useful to make some successful grants available online. I'm sure that, Ness and I would be happy to have ours put up as an example of a research grant, because it would save you guys quite a lot of reading, because people would see that, it can be succinct and give them an idea of the amount that needed to, and the style, because listening to all of you talk, we're used to writing very complicated grants that take a month to write, and as Julie said, I think, this is a real simple process. It doesn't need to be complicated. And I don't know how everyone else feels, but I'd be perfectly happy for you to put our grant up as an exemplar. The other comment I just had, which is kind of a bit facetious, it's for Sarah, and your electrification seminar. Can you encourage people to use electric chainsaws, electric line trimmers, and electric leaf blowers?
Sure. I will. Maybe you'd like to put exactly what you'd like to include in the chat box, and I'll take it all down and be sure to.
Just that. Stop using petrol-powered ones
Oh, I
And the
agree.
electric ones work just as well, and they're much, much quieter.
I agree. There is a lot of noise pollution. Gone are the days where you hear that snip, snip, snip on the hedge or what have you. I completely agree. It's a huge issue actually in our area.
And it's a small step that people can make towards electrification, right? So, yeah. Anyway, thank you.
Noted.
Awesome. Is there any
Hi,
questions?
everyone. Hello.
Hi, Gemma. Hello.
Can you hear me? I'm on my phone, so I don't know.
We can hear you. All
my
good.
video. Thank you, everyone, for presenting tonight. It's been really, really interesting. My question, I would be running, hopefully running an event, and all of my costs would be estimated. So how does it work at the end of the financial year? Is it reconciled and then we just pay back what hasn't been spent, or what are those, how does that work?
That one to Lindy as well, because Lindy's quite experienced in this.
Yeah, that can be different. If it's so, we ask for written quotes if it's $3,000 or more. But if you really, I mean, you'd have to get some quotes, wouldn't you? You couldn't just estimate everything that you were doing. We don't ask for money back. We would prefer that the money is spent in the spirit of, you know, the way it was awarded, that you use it. We have had situations where people have struggled to complete their grants. We've got one at a school that's been lingering for about 2 years now, overdue, but we still, you know, don't want them, as I say, don't want the money back. We just help them to refocus and spend that money in the right way. So I think if you're putting, I would get quotes, as many quotes as you can. Even if they're for small amounts, you know, people send us quotes. They look up, sometimes if it's a gardening thing, they'll look up websites. It might be a Bunnings or something like that. Are you talking about actual costs of a contractor, or what sort of costs are you thinking that you wouldn't have accurate costs for?
No, it's an upcycling project, so I would know how much I'd need to rent the space for the amount of time that I want to run the community workshops and project. But I'm not positive of the volume of paint and supplies that we would need. So we're not talking about a massive amount. So I'm just sort of interested in if it's the quotes, if I'm estimating some quotes, but the big ticket things like hiring spaces and stuff, I would know the amount. Yeah.
Well, I was to all the big ticket items, and I would definitely get quotes for and itemize them, and then keep receipts for everything that you've spent, and then even if it's outside of the grant time, I would just say that you know, as long as it's used within, as I said, within the spirit of the grant, I don't see why you couldn't just continue to use that money.
Thank you.
Gemma is with Shed 11, another fantastic group that we work with. So they upcycle you know, old furniture and create something, you know, absolutely brand new, unique, amazing. So it'd be very exciting to see an application come through from you, Gemma. Okay, were there any other questions? So I might just pop one in just because it's something that I sort of noticed with our previous round. It's something that Michael also touched upon. It really doesn't have to be super long. I think last time we got a lot of applications and, you know, they were paragraphs and paragraphs. It really doesn't need to be very long. It can be quite succinct as long as you're justifying, you know, the costs that you're looking at. You've outlined your project description very well. So dot points, really great formatting. Tables are also another great way to sort of like display information without having to put in long paragraphs. And then you're attaching documents like your maps, invoices, quotes, things like that. So it really doesn't have to be pages and pages long. And Michael, that's a fantastic idea about having sort of that model application up there, just to give you guys a bit of an idea of what it can look like and what, you know, a really successful application would look like, and something that you guys can sort of look at to sort of draw a bit of inspiration from.
Can I just add to that as well? So I'm a bit of a data hoarder. So sometimes when I write something, I get really attached to it and I like it. But when I look at it later, it doesn't actually answer the question in the best way. So I have two documents open. I have the draft and then I have a paragraph graveyard where I feel like I might use it later, but I usually don't. But it helps you to kind of just narrow down what's actually important to include in your application, but you still have all the other stuff that you've crafted, in case that becomes useful or just to make yourself feel better. But it means that you have a final product that is a bit more polished and it's also the best version of it. So that's something that might help.
It's a very good idea. Thank you, Vanessa. Yeah, I think some people spend a lot of time justifying or talking completely off the topic, and we get, pages and pages of stuff it's nothing about the criteria. It's quite often nothing about the grant, and I think that they think that volume or quantity is is going to get them the grant rather than quality. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'd be happy to have our grant put up as well.
That would be fantastic, Julie. Yeah. So
Thanks, Julie.
We'll pop some screenshots up of those successful grants, and that should hopefully just provide a bit of information about what a really successful levy grant application looks like, and just get the ball rolling for you. Right, well, if there's no more questions, I think we can wrap up 5 minutes early. How wonderful. I just want to again thank our amazing speakers and also just, congratulate them on the amazing projects that they did this year or are still currently doing. We're looking forward to yours, Sarah. And if anyone here is putting an application in, we wish you the best of luck. If you do have any questions about putting your grant application, if there's questions about the criteria, anything like that, you can contact myself for the Net Zero Communities Grant, and you can contact Lindy for the Conservation Grant. So if you just go to our webpage with the environmental levy grants, I'll just pop it in the chat so you have it directly there. The link to the application is going to go live on the 1st of April. So that's when you can sort of get all that information ready to go. So that's going to go live 1st of April. And I think it's until mid-May, Friday, the 17th of May. So you have about 5 to 5.5-ish weeks to sort of get your application in by that deadline. So yeah, we wish you the best of luck. And if you have any questions, my contact info and Lindy's contact info is on that page. Everything you need will be up on that page. We'll pop this recording in as well. And yeah, just send us any questions you have if they come along.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, all the people from the council who are working out of hours. So really appreciate it. Thank you.
That's right. Thank you for coming along. We really appreciate that. The best presentations, fantastic presentations from you guys. Thank you so much, all of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pleasure.
All right, take care, everyone. All the best.
Bye. Bye.
Good night.